Hey, the DJ. All right, oops, recording.
All right. Welcome. I don't know what session it is, Jim, but we are knee deep into the SASE call. What, like 6 months in now or something?
Yeah, we're over 6 months in.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But we got an action-packed one today. I'll just kind of give you a high level of the agenda and we'll go through each one. So first, we'll always start with Chip and Leron, see if there's anything product related, any Q&A there, any upcoming updates we want to talk about, know about. Jim, you're going to talk about some interesting initial access, a number of initial access attempts that SaaS Alerts has caught in the past week. We'll do an MSP spotlight. We have Lori, and Lori, I'm going to ask you to pronounce your last name. Can I take a shot?
Sure.
Tisinai?
No, close.
All right, give it to me then.
So you can't look at it when you hear
Okay.
it. So it's Tisinai. For some reason, there's an H sound, but there's no H. So Tisinai.
Tisinai?
Tisinai.
All right. Lori Tisinai. It looks like from Illinois.
Yes, just outside of Chicago.
All right, I got that part right. She's our MSP spotlight. Thanks for joining us. And then with the remaining time, we'll get into some business conversations that I've put together, and we'll do an interactive session. Hopefully we get a lot of, Jim, we get more interaction than we did with the insights.
That'd be nice. I don't think we can go much lower.
Yeah. Nowhere to go but up, Andrew.
Yeah, exactly. And then Michelle, did you already put it in? So we did an awesome webinar. Chip and Matt Lee were phenomenal yesterday. If you didn't see that webinar, I highly encourage you to. We talked on a various number of topics. I think Michelle has the URL.
I lost my chat, but I got it back.
That's okay. Various topics from, we set the stage with the fact that the national cybersecurity strategy is going to shift focus on holding vendors accountable. They call it rebalancing, taking the onus away from the user, the small to medium business, and putting it more on the vendor. And then we talked about that, the implications of it, because they also call out service providers. And then we really got into talking about different things around some of the security controls and some of those implications, more from a business side, not geeking out on the actual control. So how to have those conversations and implications and what it means to your MSP potentially. So Chip, awesome job. That was a lot of fun.
It was. That was a great webinar. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I think you even mentioned that you thought it was better than the SASE call. And it probably is because, it was just, you doing a lot more of the talking than me. So good job. All right. So we'll start. Speaking of which, Chip, Leron, anything we want to kind of bring people up to speed with? Where are we at in product? And
well, there's two things I want to talk about that aren't necessarily new product related, but we've had a double hit in the last week now with both Microsoft and Google thrown as curveballs. Microsoft threw one at us last week. Hopefully everyone on this call read the partner communication that we sent out last week, and then a follow-up to it. We'll have another one going out today regarding Microsoft changing a rate limit on their APIs. They didn't document it. They didn't release it that they were doing this. We still don't even know if it's a bug. We've asked some Microsoft insiders that we communicate with, and they've basically shrugged their shoulders and said, could be a bug, could be intentional, might not be, we don't know. Maybe Microsoft is just playing games because they're thinking that this is an attack vector that they didn't know about. At any rate, it's causing us to have to refactor a chunk of our code that impacts two areas of our services. One is the account management section, where you would search for accounts that haven't had any login activity beyond a certain date, and then either delete them or block them or do whatever else you want with them. And also for those people who are using part of Respond v2, where you can actually, instead of look at events, you can track accounts. Again, is for this sign-in information, so that you can automatically block, delete, or otherwise accounts that haven't signed in a certain amount of time. So we're not able to retrieve that specific data in the same way that we were before. So for some customers, that data is aging, meaning that the last time we would have gotten a fresh update for those two modules only would have been, I believe, last Thursday. We're diligently working on fixing that. I want to stress that this doesn't impact any of the regular event capture, correlation, and alerting and logging that we do. So the everyday functionality of SaaS alerts isn't impacted by this at all. It's more the higher level functionality of cleaning up old accounts, or what we call stale accounts, that's impacted. But nevertheless, we just want to make sure that everyone's aware of it. We've sent out a couple of communications, and we're going to add some more. The other one that has popped up now very recently, in the last 48 hours, we've seen 6 situations like this. When connecting Google as an application service, people are starting to see errors where Google is throwing up a notice that says, right in the OAuth window, that says this application is not trusted. And what we've discovered is that Google has now taken the step, whenever they find, whenever you're connecting with a VPN that Google considers sketchy, they're throwing this up. So if you're, an MSP admin or an MSP user in SaaS alerts, you're trying to connect a customer Google tenant for Google Workspace, and you get that error, it's probably because you're using a VPN, and you would need to turn that VPN off, make your connection, and then you can turn it on again. So Google has just made a random decision that they don't like the world's VPNs and they're going to shut you down. I'm seeing that happen in other services with my own. I use Proton VPN. I know we have people that use Nord and all kinds of other stuff. And more services are getting sensitive to the fact that VPNs are used extensively by hackers, and they're starting to push back on that a little bit. So, so those are the 2 general updates, I want to offer. I'm not sure that Liron or Amanda has anything new from last week, but I'll let them answer that for themselves.
No, nothing new, because all of our efforts at this point are on meeting the unified timeline. So really the entire engineering team as a whole, our sole focus right now is unify.
Very cool. All right, Jim, we're up to 44.
Yeah.
Anybody waiting in the waiting room, Michelle? Maybe we can, break a record. I think it's 51, right, Jim?
No, 56.
56. Okay.
Maybe even 58. I got to go back and look at the record books, but
all right.
I mean,
I don't know what's
Guinness,
going
Guinness
on
is
this
now
week.
tracking us.
What's that?
Guinness is now tracking us.
Awesome.
I can join from my cell phone and add another. We all join from a mobile device.
Well, if we had Google Meets, according to Chip, we'd be at 88.
If you did it that way, correct?
Yeah. Scott, we appreciate the suggestion and your willingness to do it. It's all good. Do appreciate you wearing the shirt today. Flying the colors. Appreciate it. And
awesome.
Hey, and Andrew's got it too.
Yeah. All right, Jim. So, hey, some interesting action, and you guys did some stellar work. Bring us up to speed on what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's amazing, Andrew, that we're seeing a lot more activity, incidents, our MSPs catching stuff, some MSPs not catching stuff as they should. It's one of the reasons why we have Lori on, right? Because Lori, here in a second, we're going to spotlight her. She's been a massive proponent of SaaS alerts for a little over a year at this point. And she doesn't have a very large team, but she's very diligent about following up on everything that comes out of SaaS alerts. So she's going to talk about that, because she had a couple incidents over the weekend that she was able to essentially mitigate on behalf of her customers. Unfortunately, I'm not going to mention the name of the MSP. They are a valued member of this community, but unfortunately, missed a breach, this past week, and I think the lessons learned are that if the respond rules are set up, on behalf of the customer.
Oh, don't pull plugs. We screwed up. We found it. We fixed it. It's all right. The good news is, it was a moderately small, the customer, we missed the alerts, and, all is good. We're looking forward. The customer, they're not happy. They're not mad at us. That's the good news. But, lesson learned, and that's the important part of it. And Jim, I agree with you from that perspective. And more importantly, thank you guys for being there and validating and helping and guiding.
Gary, thank you for speaking up. I wasn't gonna mention you, but you're
okay.
You've got a lot of integrity. So, and you've been with us for a long, long time. So happy to help. This is what we're here for. We exist. I want to use this as an example to, again, highlight why we exist. We exist to help you guys better protect your customers and mitigate risk on their behalf.
I agree wholeheartedly. I believe in the community mentality, and if somebody else on this call can learn from our mistake, all the best to them. And I hope they do.
Jim, can I ask you a question here in general to Gary, but then in general, first to Gary,
Yep.
I know with Respond, I know Chip, a while back was, like, hey, I don't know if we should do this, right? And then, and I'm paraphrasing Jim, right? And now and did it, and the MSPs using it are, that would have caught the situation Gary's referring to. Gary, in hindsight, if it was, would you have done it differently? And I know it's a hard question to ask.
So there are two parts of the problem. In our case, we were not diligently looking at the alerts. I started doing it when we first enrolled, and kind of put it off to a service board, and we didn't have a good process to review them on a regular basis. There were 2 alerts for out of area logins, and a day or so later, or soon thereafter, there was an email forwarding rule. Right. I don't know. I don't remember the exact time frame. Jared's on the call. He probably would know better. But had we validated either of the out of area logins and or noticed the forwarding rule, which isn't so uncommon, we could have avoided the problem.
No. I get it. What I'm suggesting is, SaaS Alerts has SOAR capability, right? Security, automation, automated response.
Yeah,
be built in. My question is, in hindsight,
yes,
roll back time, would you have had Respond invoked?
We have it now. No.
I understand you have it now.
Yeah, that's your answer though, Andrew.
I think the answer is yes. We would have, had we done it back then, we would have better prepared.
Right. So that's why I'm asking the question, and I love that, yes, no in chat, does everybody have it set up? In this case, it was geolocation plus mail forwarding. Mm-hmm. But Jim, I'm asking the question, and Chip, I'm asking the question for, should we do, a webinar, I shouldn't say webinar, a almost like outreach to the community to go walk through Respond and walk through the use cases of it, if people haven't, turned it on, like what? So that's really what I'm trying to get to. Maybe like from a customer success perspective, get Ryan's thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just answer it real quick. Ryan can jump in. We are actively, one of the metrics that we follow every single week in our go-to-market meeting with the team is how many additional partners added Response this past week, right? And we do that because we know how important it is to help them in terms of what their goals are in helping protect their customers, right? So with that being said, we're always trying to educate our partners on that. Alex and Connor do one-on-one outreach to all of the partners in our base to say, do you have Respond? Can we help you set it up? Type of stuff, right? That we can certainly probably do more sessions like on SASE calls, right? Just to make sure everyone knows, or even do another one, like a separate session where we do that, but.
Or we do actually a webinar on, what SOAR capabilities, exist out in the marketplace, not necessarily just even a pitch for SaaS alerts, but like what things are the most common, what are the most common, threat actor TTPs, right?
Right.
And how can they be mitigated? Something of that nature. Anyway, didn't mean to digress. It was just, Gary, again, thank you for being so stand up and talking about it.
Yeah. That's brave, Gary. Thank you for doing that. And you believe
I don't know
in the
about brave. Stupid, maybe. I don't know about brave.
and
That's okay.
We've got some new folks in here this week, Andrew. So like Adam is asking, basically saying, that review would be helpful. Anyone that's new to this, right? You have an account manager. If you're not getting stuff that you need from us, please reach out to either Dana or Connor or Alex, and they can get you essentially what you need or get plugged into education that will certainly help you a great deal.
Yeah. Helen's saying she wished we wish the respond rules were more flexible. Helen, do you mind just giving us some context about that?
Can you hear me?
We can now, yeah.
Okay. So what we're finding, we are actively using SaaS alerts now. We did a cutover from Rocket Cyber a week ago or so, a few days ago. And we're actively finding that the respond rules, the way that they ticket in Autotask, which is our PSA. First of all, if an open ticket exists for a customer for anything, it seems like it's adding, if a respond rule triggers to that ticket, it may be that if a respond rule has triggered for that customer previously and is still open, any additional respond rules, regardless of what they are, add to that same ticket. And we're missing things because of how our workflows work on our side and our PSA. So I've made a workflow rule in Autotask to tell me when SaaS alerts puts notes on tickets, which is of course not ideal because I have to watch that. So we would, and then the other complaint is that they make 3 tickets. If there's no respond rule already open, it makes 3 tickets for when it triggers, when it approves, and then when it's remediated. And we would prefer all 3 of those actions be on 1 ticket. So to me, the respond rules, when they trigger, they should trigger individual tickets for when they trigger. And then all of the actions that are taken off of that initial trigger should be on the same ticket. So that's just some feedback for you guys. And I have a ticket open about it, confirmed yesterday that that's expected behavior. But it's definitely not ideal for how we work in our organization.
Yeah, Helen, we actually talked about your ticket today in our support call meeting. So we did have a discussion about it. So while we have you, and since it's a useful sort of educational point for everyone, do you recall which selection you made or what selection you make for your rules in terms of how the respond rule is to be recorded when it's triggered? So there's a choice of having it recorded either for the MSP as the MSP actor or to the client as the client actor. Do you know which of those 2 choices you've made?
On all of them, we've made it to the client.
Okay. Got it.
So if there's a current ticket open for that client, I believe I misspoke. I believe it's if it's a current ticket for a previous respond rule triggered, any further respond rules, regardless of which one they are adding to that same ticket for that customer, rather than making their own tickets. And it makes sense based on how the other, just the out of the box rules trigger. They, we have the option set that if it's for the same user to put it on the same ticket, which makes sense in that regard for us anyways. But the respond rules being individual, different things, having them all go to the same ticket is just not ideal for us.
Yep. We definitely hear you. I would love to hear from anyone else on the call who's got commentary on this one, by the way. But Helen, we're definitely going to put you together with our MSP tools engineering team and talk through this and think about some options. I mean, the simple thing to state is that we can make this another optional feature in how one
Yeah.
configures respond. That's really easy to state. Like I can hear Leron's neck stretching in the background as he's going like this. Oh my God, you're going to promise something else. So it's easy to say we can do that. It's another thing to do it, but we'll spend some time with you. And I'd certainly love to hear from anybody else in the call with what their thoughts are to Ellen's, presentation of a change.
Randy's got his hand up.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about a solution or an idea, and I wanted to run this by you. Are you guys all familiar with this card game, Backdoors and Breaches? Andrew introduced it to me on the other ping. One of the things that it does is it talks about the types of attacks. And sometimes I feel like we may get so in the weeds that we don't think about if we had a macro way of setting up SaaS alerts to deal with specific issues. And you could use this not only for training, but also in educating prospective customers that this is what it helps prevent. And that they can use injections and pivots and escalates. And this is something else that SaaS Alerts does. What I'm attempting to communicate is that we have a very specific method of respond and alert. And if we were to bring it up to a one level higher and say, this is what it's actually doing, and have that be a macro call or description and a package and then a description that we could give to a customer or prospect, I think this would be pretty powerful. And we're actually elevating backdoors and breaches from just a tabletop exercise to now, hey guys, here's how we begin to counter this and come up with some real procedures that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know
Interesting.
if that's making sense or not. I'm trying to say, go ahead.
I've seen that card game handed out at different events.
Yeah.
I have never taken a look at it myself.
Well,
but
let me give you an example.
yeah.
Social engineering. Hey, that sounds something like it might occur, right? Or exploitable external service. Wait, that might happen. Or phishing. Or external cloud access. These are all things that SaaS Alerts does to help prevent. And building this up and communicating how you can stop internal spear phishing would be another example.
So here it is online.
Yeah.
And it's John Strand's company, BHIS. And what we've actually gotten to the point of doing with backdoors and breaches is we can actually do role playing with the game and get to a certain procedure. Like, for example, picture this, we get to endpoint analysis, right? And then we can go into a training lab. So picture, like we've done this with a few different companies. We go into a training lab. So pretend this video, instead of being about endpoint detection and response, has to do with M365 security.
Yep.
Right. And then from there, we can go into launching a lab, and it brings up SaaS alerts in a lab, et cetera. So I can take this offline with you and Chip, but it's a phenomenal way in which we not only teach MSPs how to handle incidences, but from there we can talk about, again, what tools, people, process you need to mitigate them and actually respond to them. But then you can do this with a customer. So, which we then could enable, if you're using SaaS alerts, you could sit down with a customer and walk through an M365 compromise. Let's walk through what happens. Let's walk through the implications of business email compromise or, mail forwarding rules or what have you. And
as I was going to say, Andrew, it also elevates the type of communication that we can send out on reporting that says this is preventing this type of attack, which occurs what percentage of the time, right? There's a whole value chain that comes out of this communication style. And if you apply it to how the partners process what respond rules to use, this kind of enables that collation, I guess would be one way to say that, of this package of rules goes to this type of defense. And these pieces all fit together logically. That may be a value proposition. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, certainly a value. It's a valuable insight and we should, and we'll definitely take it offline with Andrew, who's become
Great.
our curator of all this stuff like this. So, thank you, Andy, appreciate it.
I hope that wasn't a rabbit hole too deep. Sorry.
We'll, I guess, to be determined on that one.
Yeah.
But,
should we just real quick cap off,
Yeah.
because Helen brought up some good, anybody want to comment on Helen's thing before we move on regarding, it's almost like Helen, I know ConnectWise well, because that's where I, started many moons ago, but you'd have like, they call it two-way ticketing, right? If something opens, it just appends the ticket and keeps talking to the ticket in an ideal world. But does anybody else want to comment on that before Jim moves on and we close out Jim's area on different types of compromises SaaS alerts responded to this week?
I'd like to chime in if I could on the respond rules.
Always a pleasure listening to you, Ryan, although we don't see you in your cold environment today.
Yeah, sorry. But so to kind of, I think in some part to bring it full circle in the sense of one of the things that we've been struggling with when it comes to respond rules, the procedure side of the house, which is seems to be what Helen's having the same challenge with. Well, this somewhat relates to the same thing that you just brought up, Andy, about the thing that card game articulates quite well is the procedure aspect. There's the technical piece, there's the straight business procedure, and then there's the procedures and where they kind of align with each other. And so I would find it helpful for every PSA integration you guys support, if you had kind of what your recommended procedures are around this product, specifically the respond module, to show what your design intent was throughout the entire process, so we can see if because right away we can start matching, does your design intent match how our internal procedures are already? Or do we need to change our procedures to match your design intent? Or do we need to augment it in some other way? Like that would make it much easier for us to kind of stitch those two together for us to see, because the thing that I'm essentially struggling with on the respond module is that there's some risk and danger in using them both in two different ways. One, there's potential destructive events in the product, which is one process. Then the other process is there's potential procedural challenges about client expectation around like, okay, what does it feel like if I'm breached? I'm just not able to sign into my account? We don't like that as a customer experience. So we don't automatically do any of those respond rules during business hours. At least this is our current procedure thought process, is that we don't want to do those actions during business hours, because a better customer experience is initiating a phone call with a user to inform them that we've discovered this breach and we've blocked it, because there's no mechanism inside the product that tells them that they were blocked for activity that we're aware of. So they feel like so if I block sign in for an account because we saw, say, incorrect login activity and forwarding rules, all they get is they can't sign in their account. And the default splash page from Microsoft is the same as if their password was bad. There's no way for us to like inform them that we knew this happened outside of our ticketing system. And if our ticketing system is the mechanism that's emailing to the same email address that they just got breached and we blocked them, they can't see that activity. So we have to initiate a phone call.
Wait, can I just interrupt here for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
Ryan, or interject? So, I mean, you bring up awesome stuff. My number one question is, outside of what you're talking about, right? Hey, our clients wouldn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a policy? Does the customer have you and the customer sat down with, if these things happen because of the attack vector of M365? What is it that you would like us to do based on those things? Right. So
that conversation's never been had with our client. Our clients tend to not want to have that conversation because they believe that we are the experts in the field, that we're the ones needing to come up with those options. And what I'm articulating is during the onboarding process of this product, we've had to slow down the deployment of the product until we figure out these procedural things to then convey it to the client to then go through the onboarding afterwards.
Right, but here's my point is as MSPs, if we are going to continue to, no disrespect, right? If we're going to continue to elevate our role in governance and be really business centric companies, we have to educate them on, no, you can't abdicate governance to us. It is your job and your responsibility solely to take responsibility for your security in your organization. We are here to support those decisions. If you don't want email shut down because of these particular things that might happen, that is your choice. And we want to develop a policy so there's absolutely zero ambiguity if, and again, let's not use the term breach, if there is an incident. And so that's all
I hear what you're saying. I feel though, like as a company, I'm getting caught in the middle between those two decisions in trying to figure out this product and how to roll it out, how it aligns to what those procedures already are outside of the product. So it's like doing the analytics side of your product is relatively easy. Doing the respond side is much more hard for me and my department to pull off because of having to explore the options first. It's like we kind of need a development zone of, okay, this is how it's going to interact. This is how the client's going to see it. This is how we're going to see it. These are the type of procedures we need to adjust to align to that so that the expectation is still there and we're correctly handing that off to our client of what they should expect to see.
Hey,
Because
Ryan,
there's
can I ask a
no
question?
way for us to easily tell them, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
So if I understand what you're talking about correctly, you're worried about client communication, but if you receive a ticket of a particular type and subject or anything of that nature, doesn't your system have the ability to, if you're concerned about like off hours notifications from an automatic procedure where you're not there to call them, A, respond can notify you first without taking action, but B, I would think you can have an automated email saying, hey, dear client, we've received this out of bounds alert and we're very concerned about it. Our system has taken action and we'll contact you soon. If you have any questions, call our after hours support or something to that effect so that they know they know you've done it and you give them something to do or
Right. The challenge is more about that we're having to pivot to phone rather than email, because if we're blocking access to an account, let's say this is the approver or an executive for our client, and they're the ones that got breached. And that's the one that we typically would engage for approval or in disclosure of what's happening. If we've just blocked access to their email because it was compromised, we now can't deliver that communication through email. We need a different communication channel. And so we've defaulted to phone. Well, we don't currently have a mechanism that allows us to turn text into voice and then make a phone call and then have an interaction. Maybe ChatGPT is going to change that for us, but I don't particularly trust that either. So the thing that we're trying to kind of pivot to is having to have more of a designated person inside the client's environment that we are going to call and initiate these types of disclosure every single time, rather than the end user, so that we can inform of them what's going on during the operation, because that's where we're having the struggle with, is that, okay, if an end user is having this problem, their managers don't know. We've now blocked access to their email. They can't log into it. The manager doesn't know why they can't log into the email, and then they're not working. So it's more of a workflow challenge in that disclosure of information outside of email that we're struggling with.
So Ryan, it's an interesting, commentary and thread, because when we way before Respond was even available, when we built SaaS Alerts in its very first MVP stage, one of the things that we include with every event is a recommendation that is both presented in the UI and goes in the ticket. And we always presumed from our MSP experience that almost automatically a phone call to when I ran my ISP, we called it the SPOC, the single point of contact at each client, was part of the workflow. Sometimes our recommendation is to immediately block the account because it seems it's serious enough, but it always includes, call the client, because there is no other way, to alert them to a serious event. Once we introduce respond, it's a little more work, but you do have the option to set up rules individually for your client companies. Only have a rule apply to the client company. This is why we have templates that you can copy and actually add the client company in the SMS chain, so they're getting the alert at the same time.
I never thought about adding them to the SMS chain. That might be beneficial in that process for automatic disclosure.
Yeah. When Chip came up with this design, I thought it was really
But see,
well thought out.
what would help me here is if that design essentially was laid out, then it would be easier for me to map of, okay, if that was your intention of how you solved this problem during this, because you've thought through so many of these pieces that it's like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel in many aspects. And so, but where you guys have done great on the technical documentation of what this thing's technically doing, but if you had a similar disclosure about procedurally what these things look like in your product, that would be a benefit for me to move faster when it comes to the respond module.
Right, 100%. And I've been writing stuff down here as everyone's been talking, and I think we're at the point right now where the product has been built up so much since we first launched it, 2+ years ago. At this point, I think we're in need of at least once a month, a 4-hour standing training session to bring you guys through all of it. Like, people can show up.
I guess what
Go
I'm
ahead.
envisioning more is like, okay, these are the PSAs you support.
Mhm.
This is what we here is a initial option of, we recommend that the way we design this is we say, turn on the rules to be just, an audit, no response, and go say to your PSA system, and this is how it's going to look. It's going to add these tickets, whether to a client or to a company. And these are the things that now after this point, what are you as the MSP going to do as the next action? You need to think about, how are you communicating with the client? You either have this option or this option, and lay that out almost like as a workflow chain of like, this is what we as a vendor are expecting our clients to engage with our product in this manner. And that way, if I had that as essentially a visual flow diagram, very quickly I can see where my procedures line up with that and how I need to change that from a labor perspective to go quicker into this module, because that's been the hardest part of the platform I find in adopting is the respond module. Because, and I understand where you're coming from in the sense of like, okay, if we did this, at least we stopped a breach. The client's not going to be mad that we stopped a breach, right? And I would have thought that too, but I've now turned this on for 3 clients and we've stopped breaches, and then they asked us to turn it off because the experience of the users was so poor that they would have preferred us to do it in a different way. Now, they were still happy we stopped the breach, but they didn't want us to continue on this process without informing their users more quickly of what's going on. And we're informing them within 4 hours of the incident via phone. Sometimes we were responding during those 4 hours much more quickly, but guaranteeing that we got someone on the line to let them know, our SLA is within 4 hours. And so we need to kind of close that for this type of operation closer to that, to an hour. So we need to build stronger SLAs around this specific thing so that we have much better experience for our client. But if this SMS route could potentially mitigate some of that process, and if I can think, it would be way better for me to go, okay, because typically we have an approver at a client's site that we communicate with business decisions, but they're not necessarily a security liaison or the manager or supervisor of the personnel day to day. And so we need to kind of choose a separate person that's more about dealing with those frontline workers of their day-to-day manager and sending them that SMS message to let them know that their operations are changing because we've now blocked access to one of their employees. Well, the business owner doesn't necessarily care about that workflow as much. And so that's
Yeah.
where we've had to change it this kind of significantly.
Yeah,
Jim,
well, I would
can I
definitely
interrupt?
recommend SMS approach. And I would also argue that catching breaches is a great customer experience. Okay.
Yeah, Jim, I'm
It's
just gonna
definitely good,
jump
but
in.
the thing
I'm
is
gonna-
we want to make sure we're getting paid for it. And so the challenge that we have, we're kind of an all you can eat type of service plan, and we end up giving them great service, but then it leads into having to sell them another product.
Mhm.
Well,
So
Jim,
I'll make one final comment on this, Jim, and then I know we want to get to our guests.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan, in the end, we are an engineering company. So I think like an engineer, leader on thinks like an engineer. And I hear what you're saying, but our engineering solution to this would actually be to reintroduce something that we actually took out of the product early on because of a different kind of feedback from our MSPs.
Okay.
And that is, we initially had a requirement when every customer was established that there was a primary contact name and phone number in the customer. Jim, you'll remember this. And we got feedback from partners that said, I'm not giving you that. You can't make that a required field. I don't want you contacting our customers, because we were a new company then and people
Yeah.
didn't know anything about us. So we actually, we removed that. But what you're asking for is actually literally that. Like, it would be certainly an optional field that every customer would have a primary contact that would automatically be included in an SMS chain whenever a respond was triggered. So, I think that that's the way we would approach it from an engineering standpoint, and still leave the nuts and bolts of how each MSP wants to design their own procedures, within the scope of the MSP. I think our MSPs getting together and sharing their experiences and how they've approached it is the way that we would tackle the actual procedural design part of it.
so let me take a pause here because Lori came on and
Yeah.
we need to give her some time and I think we need to come back to this. And I'll just say this and then we'll go to Lori. It really, like, I'm having visceral responses inside of me, Jim.
Yeah.
I want to do a Sam Kennison because Ryan, you guys, I love you, man, but you guys need to rethink how you handle incidences in your company. To your point, you're an all you can eat, and most companies have a model like that. However, when there is an incident, which this is, and this was, where you shut down a customer's email, there needs to be a bifurcation. There needs to be an incident response plan. There needs to be policy. There needs to be acceptance of that customer to own what happens and not put that on you. And you should be paid outside of normal daily work as an MSP when things that literally could be business interrupting and quote unquote business ending are you're doing your work. So I'm going to cap it there. Let's come back to that. All right, Lori
Hello.
Tisinai. Do I have Tisinai?
Close. Nye. Tishnai.
Tisinai.
Tishnai.
I'll third time a charm. I'll get it for you. All right.
It's okay. All
I
good.
wish I had $1 for every time Lori had to tell people how to say her name.
But I don't even correct people because
Mm.
it's okay, right? I mean, it's
Okay.
an unusual last name, so it's all good. And I feel bad. I was
Rafi.
trying to close out of my phone that was ringing, and it has a Z just like Zoom, and I closed out of the wrong Zoom. I closed out of the wrong Z. So
Hey,
I'm
as
back
long as it
though.
wasn't a 3CX platform, we're just happy to have you here right now, Lori. And so tell us just a little bit about yourself, your company, and bring us up to speed on a little bit on what's happening in your world with SaaS alerts.
Sure. So I love SaaS alerts. I think this has been a game changer for me and my business. So as Jim said, I'm a smaller MSP. I'm located outside of Chicago. I am really the only full-time tech person working for my company, and I have 2 part-time people. They're contractors, and they work for me. One works a day and a half, and another one works, kind of in the back end. She's not really technical or that's what she says. She says she's not technical, but she helps me more on the back end with some of the software and just account management and people management. So, but I'm the full tech, and I have about 83 different tenants at Microsoft, and trying to keep up with everything is impossible. So I have to utilize tools in order to show me the alerts. I'm getting an echo from somebody, to show me the alerts so that I know what's happening. And I do use Autotask as well for my PSA, and I get alerts within there. But for a lot of this, I want SaaS alerts on my phone for my main bigger clients that I'm most concerned about. And I just want the critical alerts going to my cell phone. So if I see something that's outside of the United States coming in, or a login has been approved somewhere else, I want to know it and I want to see it. And I don't want to have medium alerts, or like, otherwise it's just too much coming in on your phone and you are going to miss something. But I was sitting in front of my computer and I saw that one of my clients got an alert that and his account has always had some issues, and they came to me a couple years ago because they had a breach where threat actors were living on their tenant for a while, and I think money or something had occurred, and then that's when they reached out for outside help. So, but that's kind of my story. I actually had two, but I even forgot the second incident of what I stopped this past week, but that one was the biggest one.
Can we stop, kind of interject? Because again, what was the experience then with the client? Did you approach them? How did you approach them? How did that all go? Because, the fact that you were able to, stop an incident is significant.
So I had seen an alert come through, and it said that it was outside in the UK. And it said it was from Avast. You know how sometimes when you give a company the third-party tool. So I thought he did this. Now I have to go back. This guy is actually, this particular client owns a company, and he's a little rough around the edges. He's former special forces, and so is everybody that works for him. And he actually, my RMM is not on his machine. He didn't want it on his machine. He blamed me for doing things on his machine, which I didn't do. He clicks on things. So anyway, I get this alert, and it was on a Sunday afternoon. Well, I asked him, did you click on something immediately? And he's like, yeah, I did. And that was for Avast. And he agreed with whatever I had just emailed him. And so I didn't think anything of it. I did email SaaS alerts, and I said, can you tell me this? And they said, no, we think this was a threat. So then I reached back out to this guy. He was traveling, and I said, we need to meet and we need to review what's going on. And then I saw a forwarding of rules. And then I just said, for sure, this is a breach, for sure, for sure, for sure. And so I called him, I emailed him saying, I'm going to turn off your email. I'm going to be blocking it. So I knew at least it would be delivered to his phone so that he would see it. I also carbon copied one of his employees, which happens to be his wife, just to let someone else know in the company that I'm shutting down his email so he doesn't freak out. Because again, he's a little rough around the edges at times. And I texted him as well on his cell phone, and then I called and left a message. And then I stopped. I blocked all email.
Wow, good. And
Lori, Helen has a question. Does he have MFA?
Everybody has MFA enforced.
Nice. And they still got around it.
They got around it. And so he was still working outside, and I said to his wife, just leave him outside. Let's just work on his machine without him right now. After a few hours, we kind of reviewed a few other things. So when we got his stuff back up and running, we talked about it, and he got an email, and then they forwarded it to me, trying to find out what really occurred. They forwarded me an email that he thought was from his accountant. It was a financial phishing email. He clicked it. He supplied his credentials, and then he clicked either approve or he entered in the 6-digit number, on his phone.
Yep.
And they were in.
Yep.
But he didn't tell me. They do have training, but he didn't tell me that this occurred. He didn't really tell me this is what I did. No one wants to tell you is the problem. So I always say this happens to everybody. It happens to really smart people. I let people know that so that, but if you don't tell me what occurred, I can't help you because I need to know what you did so I can know what I need to look for on your machine or your email.
So Lori, one, phenomenal job. And two, I hope you spend some time either with a marketing person or somebody and do a case study, because that should be on your website. It should be something you talk to prospective clients about. I mean, you got a great case study. You've got real, type, real world experience. And it should open up the door, back to my conversation with Ryan on, is there an incident response plan for this customer? And if there isn't one, now is your opportunity to do some, what we call right of boom services, where you can develop a plan, a policy, a tabletop. Let's walk through this. Granted, yes, rough around the edges and special forces, I get it. But if anybody should understand tabletop, it is a special forces guy. Right? Because that's all they do is tons of simulation, typically with real bullets. And, they should really embrace that. So again, great job. I agree with Rafi. The only thing I would say is please don't use the B word ever.
I know, cyber incident, sorry.
Yeah, no. Other people have used it on this call too. And again, it's one of those things where the only person ever who should be talking about a breach is a breach counsel, period. So just use the word incident.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that too. I'm guilty.
How come?
Because when you talk about a breach, you're talking about data exfiltration and records that have now been removed. And if you say we had a breach and there is somebody representing your client, you've now opened up a whole can of liability for yourself, because they are going to assume there was data exfiltration. If it's a medical organization, let's just take it to healthcare. Well, guess what? Now you're getting regulators coming in.
Okay, so good to know that. And I have been trying to say incident more, but I think just years of saying breach, right? So that people understand it's just something to keep changing.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't mean to come across as parental. It's
Oh
just
no,
really
I
concerning.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I just don't want ever for you to, because like I said, then all of a sudden you've got an attorney general down your throat and, investigating all of your stuff. And, if hypothetically, if there is a breach, now all of a sudden you're talking every single record, right? And you do not want to go down that path with them.
Hand in hand with that, never use the word compromise without potential in front of it.
It's interesting, by the way, based on the MFA talk in here too, and I think Helen may have mentioned, harvesting tokens. I hope everyone saw the partner notification that we sent out on Monday that Chip wrote over the weekend, because we are seeing more and more of that type of activity going on right now. So please read, if you haven't read that already, please take a look at it and take heed.
Okay.
So.
Oh, and I had to go back to my notes. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit like Angela Lansbury. Remember the TV show Murder, She Wrote?
Of course, yeah.
You wonder why anyone wanted to be friends with her, because everywhere she went, somebody was always,
bad
dying.
stuff happens. Yeah.
So I seem to have one of my other friends in the IT space was saying, I don't know anyone else that so many of these incidents happen to, but I seem to be finding these often lately, or people will call me to help them figure out what has occurred, to stop, funds from being transferred, or, whatever the mischief is going on. But
it's happening everywhere, Lori. You're just catching it, and not everyone is leveraging the tools they should to be catching stuff. I can almost every single MSP that has signed up for SaaS alerts at this point has caught something.
So then I had that. So that was like Sunday into Monday with the special forces client. And then I have another nonprofit in my town. So the special forces guy is in a different state, but in Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, I am known, as like the go-to person for anything technical related, computers, technology, and cyber. And so one of my customers is nonprofit, and I see an anonymous email going and being opened in Korea from SaaS Alerts. And I just said, we're all local here. This is a local nonprofit. This shouldn't be being opened in Korea. So I emailed the two powers that be at that company. I said, can you tell me what this file is and where was it sent and who has access to it? So then 3 people were on an email. This was only sent internally. Okay, well, I don't know what's going on here. And I know that their passwords are horrific at this company too, but they don't have the money to change it. So that's another discussion. So now we keep going and I say, okay, the director said, well, actually, I emailed this to a board member this morning at 9:30. And I got the SaaS alert at 9:31. And I said, then potentially it's that board member that has the compromise with their personal email address. They didn't tell me who it was. And as I'm on the phone with them or on the phone with someone else, I'm now getting another email. And it's one of my clients that's emailing me saying, hey, I just received this notification from this nonprofit I work with in town that my email may be compromised. So and her email was compromised. And they have a foundation. She's a personal client. They have a foundation, and they declined getting a private email account so I could put security around it 2 years ago. And she just didn't want to change emails again. It was too much for her. And I said, okay. And when this occurred, she said, well, I thought you were protecting our machines. I thought you were able to see this. And I said, I am protecting your machine, but this is your email. And it's a free email address. I can't protect that. So they're now, next week when they get back from spring break, they will be implementing personalized email. Again, they don't work anymore. They're retired, but they have a lot of funds. They have a foundation. So they're going to put 365 and now SaaS alerts around their email.
That's awesome. Again, another great case study. And Lori, thanks. I hope you start joining us. You're awesome. It's very, very, very cool to hear your success stories. I know we're a little past the top of the hour here and love to have you back and dig a little more into it. Jim, you want to wrap us up here? A great call. I know we did.
Yeah. The interaction is getting better and better and better, right, Andrew?
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
that's why we do this. And I've got notes on follow-up stuff that we're going to take. And I do want to thank Ryan, by the way. I don't know if he's still on, but he said some very nice things about us to a prospect recently who ended up signing with us. So
Awesome.
Ryan, thank you for those kind words. And others that have done the same thing. Our community is definitely growing, and it's really exciting to hear. We had an MSP call us recently and said, look, we are hearing so many great things about you. We just need to check you guys out. And I know a lot of it stems from all of you. So thank you very much.
Awesome. If anybody wants to hang back, I'm going to stop recording so you can see Jim's video. And let me tell you, it will be the best 14 seconds of your day. And to those of you watching the recording after the fact, this is why you want to come live.
Okay, go ahead.
I got to stop recording.